Well, council, let the record reflect that we are all in attendance and this is being played on YouTube. Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We've got one agenda item, was a lengthy one. And so we've got this hard copy of the presentation in front of you. But before we get into it, we'll just have a quick clip to share with you, and then we'll go into the presentation.
Wow. Looks good, Pat.
Hello.
Yes, yes. Mexico. Actually get the work done on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes we don't see them. Today is an opportunity for us to highlight some of the things that have been done in the last year. We have very good staff at the city. I will tell you that. People who really know what they do and do well. But at the end of the day, we also know that there's a lot of things, good things that we do that don't often get, stories never get told. So today's an opportunity for us to kind of start with Assistant City Manager, National Grid, to kind of walk through some of the community services, focus on the library, or whether in the parks and recreation, to just kind of go through the highlights. I know that this is a lot of information, but if at any point in time there are aspects we need to do a deeper dive on, we will make a note of that and come back to you and make sure that we do that. But we'll also pause after every one of the presentation items just to engage in dialogue if there's a question that you have. So after she's done, Director Ken McDowell will be speaking on behalf of Deputy City Manager Chris Wilson and kind of share with you some of what we're doing with regards to economic development, engineering, And we kind of walk through that, and at the end of the day, we'll share a dashboard with you, which really focuses on different things that are happening district by district. That's the first time you're going to see the dashboard. It's a good work that our IT department has put together to be able to help us capture all of these things in one place. So many times we have our residents who they're looking for certain information. And sometimes people think we're not doing some things when we really are, or we're not really messaging those things very well. So today's to connect again with the community, or also with you. So you kind of get an idea. We will not bore you by going through this slide by slide. So we'll just focus on highlights. And then if at any point in time you want to stop us, we will. We do not have to finish this today. But I do believe that it's important for us to at least hear about public safety in terms of trends, and also at the end of the day, share the dashboard with you. So unless there's any question for me, I'll hand you over to ACM.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, and good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. It is my absolute pleasure to be able to highlight some of the accomplishments and achievements from our community services team from 2022, and then also to highlight some of the focus areas that we have prioritized heading into 2023. Community services is comprised of several divisions, departments, as our city manager stated, that focus on listening, informing, serving, and supporting using a one-touch approach to providing services that are centered around promotion of the arts, enhancing quality of life, protecting our civil rights, managing basic needs, as well as providing lifelong learning for all ages throughout our community. And so this team, which is dynamic in every sense of the word, works together to create an accessible, equitable quality of life for our community. The services provided also contribute to the vibrancy and the economy of our community, as well as actively shaping Greensboro as the most desirable city of choice, whether that be choice to live here, to work here, or to play here. So I'll kick us off just giving you a couple of highlights from our Greensboro Public Library and our Greensboro History Museum. Everyone's in advance. So for last year, a couple of things that were really successful for the Greensboro Public Library and History Museum is that we're starting to see our circulation and our visitation return back to pre-pandemic levels, which is exciting. Our team in the Public Library and History Museum have worked really hard to think outside of the box to create transformational experiences for our customers to be able to learn and to grow. And so as you can see here, again, without touching every single point that's on the slide in front of you, we're seeing almost 3 million visits, both online and back in person at our various facilities. We also have 1 million plus books and materials and circulations, including materials for children. We also have continued to support our young library customers. And so with DIY or do at home, take home activity kits, do-it-yourself kits that we launched that during the pandemic. If you remember our Greensboro online program, which was a collaboration between multiple community services departments to provide programming at home during the height of the pandemic. So that has going to continue to be a success for our young library customers. A couple of programs and events that happened last year that I wanted to also spotlight that were spearheaded by the History Museum and the Public Library were bike tours that were offered for Juneteenth and Veterans Day. Sweet Honey in the Rock, if some of you had an opportunity to attend, we had over 600 people that attended that concert at the Dana Auditorium. And that was an opportunity to showcase music, African-American culture with storytelling. And then also a panel discussion when journalists gather, which was moderated by our very own communications and marketing director, Carla Banks, who did a phenomenal job moderating a panel of esteemed journalists, including Bakari Sellers, which is on the slide. And I will have to do a shameless plug. That is my daughter that didn't get a chance to meet him. She has no idea. She'll appreciate that. He signed her book for her that he wrote, but it was a really good conversation that also included Afri Kilimanjaro, as well as Siobhan Riley, to talk about the influence that media plays in influencing our democracy. So very telling. And then also the History Museum showcased the Bells of History. So Bennett College in the 1960s sit-in podcast with our very own Mayor Pro Tem Johnson to talk about the involvement of the Bennett Bells in the sit-in movement, as well as the newest exhibit at the History Museum, the North Carolina Democracy 11 elections that allows visitors to explore choices and changes across 11 elections that have occurred since the mid 1700s to the mid 2000s. So lots of good information and things happening at the public library last year and the History Museum. And so would encourage you all to take a visit and to participate. So heading into 2023, some of the focus areas for the public library and the History Museum is to develop a strategic roadmap and to start to implement that. So much like the things that you all will be discussing as part of your strategy sessions in the next month or so, the department is doing some internal work to make sure that it is structured in a way that supports advancing the vision and the priorities that council has set in terms of enhancing of the offerings for our community. Priorities also include finding new ways to meet customer needs, increasing community engagement, collaborating with other departments, also promoting and doing some outreach to help increase some visitation in both the public libraries and the History Museum, because there's lots of resources available. We just need to make sure that people are aware that it's available to them, that they can take advantage of. And then also continuing to provide those transformative experiences for customers. So creating those destinations and hubs, much like the Windsor Chavis NoCo Community Complex development, which is a priority for the Greensboro Public Library for 2023. So the next group in the community services team is housing and neighborhood development. And so some of the priority areas that they were able to highlight, what I want to highlight that were accomplished and achieved in 2022, which were major. They aligned with the housing GSO plan, as well as with council's goal of creating opportunities to help build a better community through affordable housing, neighborhood revitalization, homelessness prevention, and community improvement. And so much of the progress that was made in 2022 related to permanent supportive housing, affordable housing developments, and pandemic relief efforts. As you all recall, we had a very successful $30 million housing bond referendum and an additional nearly $30 million that was leveraged in public and private capital for funding multifamily affordable housing. And
Question.
Yeah, can we, I know you want us to hold questions, I think, but can we, like, my main question is 2.8 million visitors, what would be the breakdown per library? But I think it would be important to know where we have majority, where we have minority, if there's a smaller number of visitors in the library, is there a better use for that building, you know, rec center or some type of neighborhood component that would drive more visitors? I mean, so Mr. Manager, you want to hold all questions till the end?
Now they wait to manage that time.
Why don't we wait till the end of each department?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes more sense that way then.
So, no,
I'll
it's
hold
the
it
end of
just
the
in
presentation.
508 questions.
So if you're holding to in departments, I have a question for the previous department.
Libraries.
Yeah, no,
So I was thinking the plan is for us to wait until Nasha is done with all the departments. Yes.
I was gonna post.
Yes.
Okay.
Before we go to the next,
Okay,
if that makes sense. Sure, all right. But we will note that, say breakdown
Yes.
of visitors to the libraries.
Yep, per branch, got it. Just continuing on, talking about the multifamily housing investments that will help grow and preserve our affordable housing stock, as well as the amount of investment in CARES funding has been a huge success for us to start to be able to deploy those in 2022. So continuing on, in 2022, over 1,600 units were able to be touched. We had 613 multifamily units in the pipeline for development. And in terms of emergency rental assistance, we were able to serve over 3,100 households, which is a really good number and a testament to our ability to continue to support our residents in need. The Lead Safe program also achieved green level status for exceeding grant targets for assistance dollars spent as well as training administered. And we've had multiple conversations about the Regency Hotel and our winter shelter plan. And so we've been able to be at full capacity for sheltering at the Regency. Next slide, April, as well as launching 2 new programs, the Doorway Project and the Safe Parking Initiative, which are, if not at capacity, are near capacity with our ability to be able to serve during the inclement weather this winter.
Gosh, I have a logistical question. Is this 2022 or is this, what are you basing this year on? Our calendar year or our city fiscal?
Yeah,
This is 2022,
So it's calendar year.
yes, calendar year.
yes,
One thing that I failed to mention to you is, you probably received the annual report from Believe Housing,
yes.
late last year, which really captured some of what been presented to us. So this is calendar year 2020.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's a fiscal year. You're talking calendar year. That's a big clarification.
So it's FY 21-22.
That's right. That's a fiscal year.
Yeah,
I'm talking calendar.
calendar year.
But I just want, I mean, that means that matters. All right.
So the other accomplishment and achievement for housing and neighborhood development in 2022 was also the home repair GSO program, which was a council approved initiative to help focus on repairs versus total rehab, so that we can assist more homeowners, and will also offer grants rather than loans, as well as the public service heroes and the continuation of the 100 homes effort. And so those are our down payment assistant and closing assistant programs to our first time home buyers, to assist them for city employees, Guilford County employees, public schools employees, and or military veterans. Another accomplishment and highlight or high priority, high spot for our housing and neighborhood development is for code compliance. And so we've been able to work diligently throughout the year to help to make sure that our inspectors and our teams are much more approachable, doing our very best to prioritize the ways that we can remove barriers to be more responsive across the entire city. And so what that looks like is additional training for our code officers around crisis response, administrative warrants, also in language services, because we know that that can also be a barrier for many homeowners who English may not be their native language. As well as making sure that we're providing more education on many of these processes, because a lot of times homeowners may not know the process to make the necessary repairs to their properties. And so we've made a concerted effort to prioritize that last year. We've also have implemented the receivership program to help bring more quickly these different properties up to minimum housing standards so they can be returned to the community as safe and affordable housing. And then also focusing on clearing those nuisance and demolition lists throughout the community. So heading into 2023, we'll continue to move forward with our housing GSO implementation. And so what that will look like is continuing to leverage the strength of our partnerships. And so we've heard very consistently from each of you that it's very important to make sure that we're focusing on collaborating, whether it's with our nonprofit community organizations, other municipal entities, thinking outside the box in terms of private financing companies, different philanthropic organizations, foundations, even non-traditional partners. And so we will continue to forge ahead doing that in 2023. We'll also continue further engagement with the community, because again, hearing about the responsiveness, the need for greater community services, making sure we're educating about processes that have greater community impacts. Is a continued focus for us. So making sure that we are being more strategic in one, our customer service efforts, one, how we're engaging with more minority contractors throughout our processes, partnerships for neighborhood revitalization, continuing to support and engage with and participate on the Intergovernmental Task Force for Homeless Services, and then also engaging with our neighborhood Congress and community watch group so we can get more eyes and ears to know what's happening in the community and where we're needed. Additionally, continuing to sponsor some innovative approaches and best practices to housing. And so looking at our utilizing our housing loan fund, continuing through our home ownership and our home repair programs and expanding those, continuing our focus on permanent supportive housing. Also looking at creative housing options. That's also important as well. And then expanding support to our residents doing individual repair projects or to community groups that are doing community cleanups through our tool lending library will be some areas that we will continue to focus in 2023. So the next team member on community services is our Creative Greensboro, and that's our office for arts and culture. And this is a dynamic group that if you've been a part of this group, if you've ever purchased a ticket to a sporting event, a concert, a play, if you've attended a gallery or a museum exhibit, if you yourself are a creative person, you are part of our creative economy. And so that is important to the vitality of Greensboro because one, it helps improve our quality of life. One, the creative economy creates jobs in supporting small business and our local artists. One, it also demonstrates the identity that Greensboro has as a thriving creative community. And then also just the vibrancy in the fabric of our community. Arts brings many people together across all different spectrums. And so our Creative Greensboro team has had a successful year in being able to move forward the cultural arts master plan through a number of different programs and initiatives that help to shape our region's creative economy. And so to highlight a few of the achievements just within 2022 alone is the Creative Activation Partners Program that was implemented, which provides no new low-cost studio rental for artists. And so we were able to support over 150 artists and renters in the Cultural Center, and which resulted in over 8,000 participants being able to participate in arts activities. The Creative Greensboro team also took over management of the Van Dyke Performance Space. And so the focus there is on increasing accessibility and affordability for local arts and cultural groups to access the space. And as a result of that, we were able to utilize that space to 42 artists and organizations that hosted over 100 events in 2022, which is phenomenal. Additional programs that were launched last year is the Greensboro Residency for Original Works, which is GROW, as well as the residency at the Hires. And so the focus of these two programs were to bring new diverse artists into the space at the Cultural Center through artist residencies, focusing on creating new work and engaging the community. Additional efforts in partnership with the Housing Neighborhood Development Department, as well as Parks and Recreation and a few other departments throughout the city, as well as local groups and artists, included the Neighborhood Arts Residency Program, where we were able to focus on some of those reinvestment areas in the housing GSL plan to do some community art projects. This also received some national recognition for the program published by the Americans for Arts in the summer 2022 Arts Links magazine. So there was some recognition for the implementation of that program where we were able to engage with almost 40 artists, over 1,000 participants that helped to create more than 20 new public artworks across the city. We were also able to commission some artist work in the downtown. And so additional art pieces were on kiosks throughout the downtown, on the downtown kiosk, as well as the commission for the space, the art piece that's just outside the Plaza Conference Room here at the building. Into 2023 is continuing to expand the GROW program, so increasing that compensation to our artists and marketing of the activities of our residencies. That program also received the North Carolina Arts Council Award, and so that's the highest Sparkler Grants Award statewide for support over 2 years. So we'll be looking forward to implementing that heading into as well as doing some improvements at the Greensboro Cultural Center. And so that was enabled through ARC funds that were approved by City Council, and that will allow us to create larger multi-use spaces in the Cultural Center for expanding community programming. It'll also allow us to create some co-working environments for nonprofits and individual artists, and then address some of the deferred maintenance and facility upgrades inside the building, including accessibility. Additional focus areas for 2023 with Creative Greensboro are also implementing the inaugural slate of the Sustaining Creativity Community Partnership Grant Award. Say that fast 5 times. And you all just received the press release for that yesterday, I believe. And so that is really, really exciting. This represents a $400,000 investment that you all approved. That is a key recommendation in the Cultural Arts Master Plan to support our local arts economy. And we were able to fund all of the 18 organizations that applied at the level that requested or slightly above. And that is a significant achievement and accomplishment, not only for Creative Greensboro, but for City Council. And so that your support in that will go a long way in the creative economy. And so that's a huge accomplishment and something to be celebrated. The other significant mural projects that we have lined up for 2023 installation over at Peeler Community Recreation Center and at Hester Park through funding for participatory budgeting, so the both will be led by local artists. And then also continuing the Neighborhood Arts and Creative Allies program, and then participation in an arts and economy prosperity study for Guilford County. And so that'll be in partnership with Arts Greensboro and the Americans for the Arts to get some data on our entire prosperity study for the creative economy here in our region. So the next group with community services is our Guilford Works and or Workforce Development Department. For 2022, again, another successful year. Nearly 60,000 individuals were able to access or receive career and employment related services through Guilford Works. The team was able to launch the Mobile Career Center, which is the first year of its operation last year, and was very successful in being able to host nearly 100 events, partnering with over 300 community organizations, and serving 1,000 individuals to provide access to high quality workforce information and services. This was also an effort, which was a focus area for Guilford Works, to increase information sessions for our employers and make those stronger connections for those that were looking and seeking employment services. Information sessions were also held with various employers in industry sectors, including healthcare summits. Transitional services were also provided to employees last year or employers last year to help to make sure that we were able to support those dislocated workers. A new state-of-the-art North Carolina Works Next Gen Emerging Workforce Career Center, which is right across the street from where we are right now, opened in downtown. And so that facility opened with much fanfare and serves to support our young people ages 16 to 24 in helping to find employment. It allows for central collaboration with our partners. It's easily accessible for integrated customer services for workshops, training classes, et cetera, and so forth. So that was a very, very exciting opportunity to be able to open that last year. And then also wanting to highlight that nearly $5 million in non-workforce innovation opportunity act monies were received through dislocated worker grants and apprenticeship training and grants programs in information technology. And majority of that went to helping to support our dislocated and marginalized workers. So some significant dollars that were invested here in our community in terms of our workforce and workforce services. So heading into 2023, some of the focus areas for our Guilford Works team is the onboarding of new department head leadership. So we're going through the process right now to finalize a new department head for this group. We're increasing community presence and establishing community hubs to be able to deliver more services directly into the community to where they need it the most, as well as continuing to our goal of positioning Guilford Works as the #1 leader of workforce related matters in our region and in our area. And then telling our story. And so making sure that, through the annual report, through our web materials, through a presence and connections with our community partners, our universities, really making sure that we are engaging with our businesses that are relocated in this area, making sure we're connected, our community to these opportunities, employment opportunities to grow our economy. Our Human Rights Department is also a member of the Community Services team. And so some of the high points and accomplishment for the year centered around international support, our reentry programming, fair housing and landlord tenant dispute program implementation, and increasing our capacity for staff support. And so through the efforts last year, the Human Rights Department was able to handle over 5,000 interactions with community members for interpretation services. Telephonic interpretation services alone totaled about over 1,100 calls representing 32 languages in our community. So that speaks to the diversity of needs that we serve and our ability to be able to meet those needs effectively. Our reentry programming, approximately 280 people attended programming in 2022, where we were able to process a number of expungement requests, but also continuing to provide access to programming in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce, community resource fairs, some virtual programming to raise awareness of the process for expungement and connect people to access to legal services. Our fair housing and landlord tenant dispute program fielded a record high 675 calls for support. And we were able to reach over 350 program participants across all fair housing outreach events in 2022. And then we're able to launch a few new initiatives for our commissions and our boards, including adding additional staff support. We had a number of talk series. So Let's Talk Law series, the Woman of Greensboro survey. We launched a woman-only swim program for Muslims, Black-owned business Mix and Mingles, and we are developing a training model for our shelters. So since knowledge, our focus area in 2023 really centers primarily on expanding education and outreach for international support and language access. And so that will be done by increasing our bilingually certified staff. So there is a program internally for the city of Greensboro called Greensboro Speaks, where city employees can go through and learn basic Spanish to be able to connect with our Spanish speakers throughout the community, and that's been a huge success. So we'll continue to expand those opportunities to get staff certified. We'll also continue our fair housing and landlord tenant education and outreach, our expungement clinic partnerships, as well as launching our public accommodations community campaign. And then commission activity, you will see coming up very soon. The Commission on Status of Women will be launching a programming launch for Women of Greensboro survey. And that will happen in March on our Women's History Month to help kick that off, as well as a slate of a listing of other programs. International ambassador recruitment will also be a priority this year, as well as the distribution of our police community survey, which will happen sometime after the spring. And then last but not least, our Parks and Recreation Department. There's always something happening in Parks and Rec. And so several exciting projects and a variety of initiatives and programs advance recreation and leisure across our Greensboro community in 2022. Most notably, the Battleground Parks District, the first phase, the grand opening was held in 2022, which is the first of its kind. The Peeler Community Park, which you all have been invited to the grand opening happening later this month, was significant and was completed in 2022. The Downtown Greenway, although it is nearing completion, the Parks and Recreation Department began oversight of all of the programming and the events for the Greenway back in July of 2022, which is significant, and started to build its team that would help support not only the program coordination, but also the maintenance and the operations of that facility. And there was also record attendance for one of the events that was held on the Greenway this summer, the Running Block Party.
Let me ask you a question about Peeler. Are we retaining the pool and redoing the pool?
So that's one of the priorities heading into 2023 through the Aquatics Facility Master Plan. And so there's been some community engagement around that, and that can be something we can bring back at a later date because the plan is still in draft mode. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I have mentioned this before. I've got no additional feedback. One of the things that I would not like is the sprinkler rather than the pool. So I'll just put that in there. You can pass it on.
Will do. We've the department has gone through an engagement process and presented a couple of different options for the community to provide preference. And I believe Peeler may have a combination of a pool and spray aquatic facility, as well as some other really innovative amenities. But we're happy to bring that back to.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then heading into 2023, for the last slide, for Parks and Recreation is continuing the implementation of Plan to Play. Very excited because there's new leadership in the Parks and Recreation Department who has that vision to continue to carry that plan forward. And so that also includes the Windsor Chavis NOCO complex development, which I mentioned previously is a collaboration with the Greensboro Public Library and other community department, city departments and community partners. As Mayor Pro Tem just mentioned, moving forward with getting the aquatics master plan finalized and beginning on the pool renovations that were also funded through ARPA funding that was approved by City Council. Continuing to focus on neighborhood park improvements, as well as Gillespie Golf Course renovations, and then expanding programming department-wide. So making sure that the department is keeping lock in step and in alignment with the needs of the community. and then continued growth of the Greensboro Parks Foundation. So those represents all of the community services team. I've got a mouthful, and I'm sure you have burning questions. So I'll do my best to answer them. But if there are things that require a much more detail, happy to respond back and get you more information.
So Zach, I guess you go first.
Go ahead. I can't believe I'm not sitting I'm going off.
Let me see over there.
So that's, I sit close so I can see this thing, which is why I sit now.
Yeah,
So-
I'm wondering.
So,
Go ahead.
no, I don't know who was the name. I don't.
So Sharon, didn't see anybody else?
So you did say a mouthful. So I ain't gonna try to go back and help you regurgitate all of that. But I did want to know, have we gotten an update on Windsor Chambers? That's one of the first things I wanted to know.
Yes, yes. So Windsor Chavis is currently in the design development phase. And so the construction manager at risk was approved by council about 2 months ago, which is Samet Corporation. So right now they're working with the architect, refining the schedule. At this point, the design development phase is slated to go through the majority of the year this year. And looking to hopefully break ground at least at the end of the year or the first part of 2024. But we're happy to bring back a very detailed update for you.
Yeah, if you could, that would be important, as well as the status of our of any additional funders to help complete that project. Because that project will be completed.
Yes.
Let me say that out loud for whoever's listening, who thinks it's not, it will be completed. But yeah, let me know what that is. The other thing you brought up, you talked about code enforcement. One of my concerns has been that enforcement is really not happening the way it should. And that's because the hours don't go past 5 o'clock. And our most violators seem to be after 5 and on the weekend. So I really love us to explore more around extending hours to some, to some point where we can address the concerns that we keep getting calls about, but don't keep getting answered. Because I do know it's a lot, but my district in particular, I'm speaking for, I hear a lot from individuals who want to know why it takes so long. So code enforcement, as well as I would love for us to talk more with the state about the notice time. And I've said something to your legislative person last week about, with repeat offenders, we need to cut that notice time down to 24 hours. If this the third time we've heard about it, it shouldn't take us another 10 days. Send a letter, wait for a response, and then do something about it. They were a repeat offender by me, told you. They didn't respond the first 2 times, they're not gonna respond the third time. I didn't, so that's part of code, because that is a department I think is kind of overwhelmed. So I appreciate that. Other thing I think I was going to ask you about, if you can come back with the actual locations of the receiverships and how they're chosen in priority, and why some are picked over others, because we tend to use East Greensboro a lot to promote programs, but East Greensboro isn't getting addressed. Tell you that right now. Everything's happening on the west side. It's not happening on the east side. And then the 2 lending libraries, do we work with our Love Your Block program? Because sometimes neighborhoods want to do Love Your Block, but if they know they can go and get tools for the lending, we need to probably create maybe that partnership so they know they have that accessibility. Maybe they don't have rakes or whatever it is they may want to kind of help clean up the neighborhood as we help them clean the block.
I will say, I've been working with Michelle Kennedy on that, and that is part of the program because a lot of people that Love Your Block also have the skills to do some of this heavy lifting. So that will be a partnership.
Okay.
Are you finished, Sharon? Are you finished? Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm finished, because
Well, I
think
wanted to ask a question. Some months ago, I saw the design of the Windsor Chavis NoCo complex. It was beautiful, but I did ask the question about the glass and what effect that would have on heating and cooling. I have not received, I don't know if that's the final, that's the definite final rendering or not. But I would like an update on that, please. And if it is the final rendering, I'd like to have the questions about heating and air and the what kind of money that's going to cost us. I love the center, and I certainly support the center, but I don't want us to build something that in the future we say we should have done such and such because the utilities are so high. So I would like an answer to that.
Okay, yes, ma'am, we can provide that for you.
Could I get it in the next 2 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
So I was gonna say on those two items, those are ones that we need to come back to council, update on Windsor Chavis NoCo. But this is a very important one you just brought up with regards to the tools lending. We have a partnership with Lowe's, which we will ultimately come and share with you how that evolved and how that can tie into Love. But I think it's something that council and residents will really love. So we'll come back to you and really dive into that, how Lowe's is partnering with us by providing equipment or some of these tools to us. And it's going to be a mobile unit that can go from place to place, so people don't have to go there.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about it, because most of the Love Your blocks have been in District 1, they've been nowhere else. So I need to know, because that will benefit the individuals that have already done it, and they're passing the word around, and I've already gotten calls for people who want to begin. Okay, because that's where it originated, that's where it started. So whatever.
Tammy?
I have a question from the human relations side of the house. Quite a while ago, we passed a non-discrimination ordinance. Through talking to individuals, it seems like we're really not doing anything with that, because at the time, it was determined that there was no real repercussions that we could put in place if somebody was violating the rules in terms of our LGBTQ community. Since that time, communities in the state have put in rules and are enforcing and are taking actions on those. And I'd love to get an update on where we are, if we need to make modifications to our NDO to allow us to specifically assess penalties and that kind of thing, then we need to do that. We're not doing anything with that.
But
right
I
now.
think that was an amendment to the policy.
So too, but we're not doing anything with it at this point. So we need to figure out why we're not moving forward on that. Last I heard, we're not taking actions really on those questions from people and concerns from our residents. And I want to just follow up and see if we can go over where exactly are we on that, and what do we need to do to make that ordinance worthwhile?
You mentioned other communities that may have some other sticks in their, other than just penalty. Can you share those? Because I'm always willing to beg, borrow, and find out what other communities may have discovered.
No, I found out about it from our neighborhood, not neighborhood development, from our human relations department when I asked why we want to enforce it. So they can give you specific cities that have instituted something.
I'm just curious if they have other enforcement tools that we're aware of by statute, but I can explore that. Thank you.
The other thing, another just quick question is, do we have a directory or anything published on the website or anywhere that details out a tour or a listing of all the cool public art that we have? I think that could be beneficial for the CVB and other organizations to say, hey, we've invested in all this great public art. Here's where you can go see it. So if we don't have such a listing, I think it would be great if we could compile that and perhaps publish it to not only our residents, but in the convention and visitors guide as well. Thank you.
Any other questions on this portion? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
On Nasha's portion.
Yeah.
Okay. Nasha. Would love to see the breakdown of visitors to the library, the history museum, or whatever museums you're counting. As we review our city-owned assets, I think it's important to understand the actual utilization per building, then pumping them together. You know, it's great to hear the successes and everything we've done in the past. But what's the calendar for the future for the library? What is stated right now that's been scheduled for 2023 calendar year? I'd be curious about that. I'm curious about the library's cross collaboration. What departments today really collaborate with? What partners outside of the city do they partner with? I know we don't partner with them. And so I'm just curious, when you say cross collaboration, what does that look like from a library and history museum perspective? And then, quite frankly, that cross collaboration carries through with each department that you have. Because I noticed that you highlighted it in the library, didn't highlight it in other departments. And I find that fascinating because we all, from a city perspective in each department, should be cross collaborating in every department. But you highlighted it in one. Housing, y'all gonna hear a lot of housing about this year or the next 6 months of the fiscal year. One of my biggest concerns, this wasn't mentioned, is we talk about let's see how you put it, permanent sustainable housing. I'm curious to know what is being done currently right now for those folks that y'all are gonna displace them on. It's January.
You call me back.
How many times we were? So thinking about that, and that is something that, you know, if we're not hammering that right now, we're behind. Because you're gonna displace Regency in, we can pride ourselves on how great we've done for temporary housing. But that's a focus point every year since I've been on this council since 2007. But we panicked and got a bunch of spent millions of dollars getting stuff done temporarily. So I want to know almost every meeting, I'm sure every council person wants to know, what are we doing? It's one sentence to make sure that when these folks are displaced, we're going to be the ones displaced them. It's like we did last March in the Regency Inn. We're able to do it in pallet homes. Where are they going to go? Because if they're going back on the street, and this is one of the focus points, we failed. So that would be something that I think every time we can get an update on that is extremely important. Councilwoman Hightower mentioned there's some property that apparently the city owns near Bennett College in downtown that potentially can sit empty. Are we actively having discussions on that?
Yes, we are.
I haven't heard of things. I would love to hear, see
I
that.
just have a snippet last week. I got an in passing discussion.
I don't want to impact. I think this council deserves a firm paper.
That's all I do. I get it.
I think we need a firm paper.
That's what you're talking about.
But they're working on that.
It's a focus point. I think to share that, send it to everybody.
So I did call to find out what was going on with John Denver. Sharon has mentioned it a number of times, and I had heard that we are in the process of rehabbing that building now.
Yes.
I believe we're gonna sell it to somebody else, but we're having it rehab now, if I understood it, I remember correctly.
My understanding,
Understand, like,
my 2 minute understanding was, that we were gonna rehab. The money was found to rehab. It was from CDBG money was found.
But I'm curious.
Rehab
We don't-
for family situation, or maybe even some of that situation, but minority contractors, we throw that out too, because they don't get opportunity. That's just a throwaway,
That's gonna come up here.
are supposed to be, in that property.
said that.
So, not sure, how long are we on that property?
I think to look up the exact date, from when we took ownership of that. So I can look
If
up
it's
that for you.
been over 1 year, and that's a focus point for permanent housing, we have failed.
We've owned it for well over almost 10 years, a long,
10 years.
because I've
That's
been
been
here
sitting there.
8, and ever since I've been here, it's been.
Yes.
Somebody, did the city sell it to somebody and they got it
I've
back?
been going for it.
No,
So that,
that's not how.
Mr. Manager, and so when we're looking at some of these libraries and we're looking at some of the buildings that we own, and if they're underutilized from a library perspective or something else, can we do something in a temporary housing shelter? Sell it to some focuses on sheltering. There's strategies we can put in place. That's not my forte, but even I know that makes sense. And so on these housing, if that's a focus, I think it would be a terrific managerial decision in which, if these are our focus areas, at minimum each quarter, we get an update on what we have done to implement said focus area. And that, I don't want to dive just on the John Demery, but that's just a sign of a disaster of how we have it. Strategic engagement, the more minority contractors, Sharon, we talked about this. Worked with you for 10 years. Nasha, seriously. What actually are we doing to engage? I don't need an answer right now. Been down, but is there something better? You mentioned in Guilford Works leadership changes. Well, we have leadership changes happening. If that wasn't mentioned in the focus for Creative Greensboro. Again, you mentioned leadership changes in Guilford Works when Mr. Rivera resigned, and that's an exact loss. But we've got Ryan Deal, who we know is not going to be here. Hell, he's in Connecticut. So when he's going to be gone by the end of February, why isn't that mentioned in the focus area, just like Guilford Works? So that was kind of a miss. So we need to have that.
It's still
It's still working for us.
But you've told me, and I've been told today, that it's gonna be transitioned out as soon as possible, a job description. We're looking through who they're gonna hire as, y'all, the city are gonna work, who's gonna hire as a consulting firm in which to hire his replacement. So if we know there's a replacement, then is he gonna be working with us in 3 months?
It could change his mind. What I do,
Zach, there's a request for proposal already on the website for that position.
what
So
I
there's
also-
leadership changes.
Yeah, I just want to be very careful that we are not getting into HR discussions and just kind of, because those are very separate administrative issues that.
I understand, but if there's a job description on the website and we're talking about HR with Guilford Works and we're gonna have a new potential transition, we're going out for an RFP for a consulting group to help hire said position. To me, that's not a secret, that's public information. So I'm gonna keep going, just that I can write these up later in the interest of time. You know, what is the future of Creative Greensboro? How is it gonna collaborate with other partners? That wasn't, the cross collaboration really wasn't mentioned in Creative Greensboro, yet again, it was mentioned in the libraries. Guilford Works, 59,185 individuals were assessed, processed, aided in some direction. How many of those jobs through Guilford Works? And what I'm trying to understand is what is our hit ratio? What is our ratio in getting folks employed? through all those, because it's easy to walk down, rather than downtown Greensboro. And I talk to every person that walked downtown and I engage them, but if they don't come back and I didn't help them, then what difference did it make? So what is our ratio? Because if you're trying to position Guilford Works as a #1 leader in workforce, then we need to know that statistic. Second of all, just out of curiosity, do we know where we rank today through the state? Because what does it take to be? Who's number? The human relations, the glaring thing, and Councilwoman Thurman, I discussed this when I met with a few different organizations dealing with LGBTQI, organizations that reach out, such as Guilford Green. One of their glaring remarks was, we asked for this a long time ago. We haven't heard from anybody from the city. I don't want to interrupt you. We haven't heard from anybody from the city relating to human relations on this. What's the status? I'm a new councilman. I don't know. So I sent y'all an email and Councilwoman Thurman was asking the same question. So sometimes when I copy y'all, it's not to just come at the manager. Y'all know more than I do.
You presume.
Well, I haven't been here in 8 years. So, that shows me what? That the Human Relations Department is not cross collaborating. And that's a theme you mentioned in the first one from the libraries. And I'll just throw it back out that the Human Relations Department needs to human relate to other organizations that they can partner with to cross collaborate. Parks and Rec, I think Yvonne said it, or somebody just said it. What's going to be the cost and budget associated with each project you've got listed? You've got a tremendous amount of projects listed, including, the Gillespie, the neighborhood, the aquatic master plan, the Keeley Park, mountain bike adapted. What's going to be the cost associated with these projects? So that we can get an understanding, because you got to work in a budget. And then a question that I don't think has been answered or asked very much. What is the annual budget increases for the new project? Meaning staffing, programming, etc. Because that's a number we can get bond money. We got bond money here, we got bond money there. But when it comes to staffing, programming, and all those other things, that is a line item budget that's going to stick with us in the next 3 or 4 years each year. We need to know that number. And so those are just top really quick questions that I have. I'm sure I'll have more that I can send to you later.
Zach, you might as well include maintenance in that number as well.
Deferred maintenance, preventive maintenance.
Yep.
Exactly. Nancy, I hope you're feeling well.
Thank you. It's a better day.
Great to hear. I'll chime in here also. I think Zach was looking at my notebook over here. He was making his comments. I like the report. It's good, but it could be better. And to the point of, as a whole, and this isn't just for Nash, this is going to be for everyone. Just for us to use the tool as a place to know where we are, and what we're doing, where we're going, what's going to cost us, and the timelines. I think that'd be helpful for all the topics that come up. And I know this document's already 97 pages. It may end up 212 pages. But it'd be, for me, it'd be more helpful to see that roadmap, and especially when it comes to housing. And I don't want to take it back to the old school, but we're doing all kinds of housing now. We're doing, we're approving zoning for new houses. We're doing the Regency. We're doing the transitional, all kinds of stuff. It'd be nice to see a running tally, a running total of the successes or the numbers that we have, so that at any point in time we can look at it and say that, as far as X, Y, or Z, this is where we are. And also attached to that, any monies that we've thrown into it, so that we can track the dollars, and then also the timeline. Because housing is a crisis, we talked about it. It is a top level topic for all of us. And so I think it's important that we keep our eye on that prize. Those are just my general points, but in general, having that roadmap for everything, where we are, where we're going, how much money it's going to take, and the timeline to complete it, so we can always look back at any presentation and compare apples to apples, coincide, so to speak.
So Hugh, to your point about housing and knowing where we are, Monica, our new employee, I worked with her today and kind of gave her her first project, and it's about housing, going back over the 18 months and pulling everything out of our agendas over the last 18 months, where they are, where they're located, how much money's been spent, are there permits listed. Her first project will take a while, but I think we're on the.
Yeah, and it takes a presentation like this, it makes it much larger, but to Dak's point about the libraries, you know, it's nice to hear about the libraries, but what's the detail behind it? You mentioned about workforce development, that $5 million in the innovation opportunity. But what did it do? In human rights, you talked about the Thrive reentry, you know, the 280 folks who were contacted, but what were the results? And just those kinds of things, again, not mean to make it larger, it will, but it'll be more helpful, I think, for not only council members, but anyone else who's reading it and trying to interpret it.
Megan?
I just had one quick comment and then a comment about, not sure about the doorway project. My understanding of the day was to go over all of this and then, you know, see what questions we had and what needed to be worked on and you know, Tammy's brought up some points, Hugh brought up some points, Zach, Sharon, everybody has, but I don't think we're going to get it all solved today about everything that we're hearing about. And that's one reason I wanted to mention the doorway project, because my understanding and hearing about it at the lengthy council meeting when Michelle spoke, and Nasha has mentioned that, and when the IRC was hired to oversee, my understanding was, if I'm correct on what Michelle said, was that the people there would be going out and looking for jobs and looking for ways to get out of the program. And then by March, the goal was that all of those people that were in the pallet homes would have found a job and or have found housing. Now, I don't think I'm incorrect on that. So I wanted to make sure, because otherwise it sounded like we were just going to dump people out on the streets again. And to me, that was the whole concept of the pallet, was to not have that happen in March. Am I correct?
You are correct, and there are people who have already transitioned out of the pallet shelters into permanent housing. So yes, you are correct.
Yes, and I just want to make it clear, because community is watching and say, oh, y'all are going to dump people out of the streets in March. No, we're not. You know, they are going to have had some kind of wraparound service to assist them in getting either employment or living conditions or the help they need, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, the mayor's right. Some people have transitioned. My comment probably could have been articulated better in the sense of the folks that were not able to get help in some form or fashion, whether it's Regency or pallet homes, that, because I haven't heard, I heard from Sean and afterwards from other people that they've been transitioned properly. But there's some that aren't going to be able to be transitioned.
True, and I agree with you. It just sounded like a whole would be let out on the streets and.
Well, hopefully, as they transition, we'll fill them back up.
Yeah, and we'll solve the problems someday.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're awaiting us.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions to grill Nasha with?
I don't intend it to be great.
Yeah, so at this rate, we will not be able to finish at this rate. So my hope is that we identify areas where you want us to come back or provide additional information, not necessarily to provide answers to you. I think it's really more about highlighting a lot of good work that's been done by our staff, and we can provide a lot more information, and a lot of this information actually are out on our website even now as we speak and ask them. But because of the lack of time that we have, because we only have less than an hour, our transition to ACM, Davis, to kind of talk about public safety, because I really want us to see the dashboard that I just created before we finish this. So, sorry, Kenny. Let's go to the public safety piece. And then we will go back there.
You know, Mr. Manager, something to really consider. I get that we need to celebrate successes. But as we begin 2023, it's really about where we are and where we're going. And you know, to spend hours talking about what we did, I see 2019 here. We know what we did in 2019. We know what we did in 20. We know a lot about what we did in 21 and a lot about what we did in 22. Where are we today and where we're going? Right.
So, Mayor and council members taking some cues from what I've heard so far. I will try to get through this, not too quickly, but at the same time, I do want you all to be able to have some discussion, ask me questions. As the manager said, when you see some of these slides, you get an update from me weekly, so I try to just grab a few highlights, but also provide some of that direction and where we're going. So the first slide, if you would just go to that first one. So GM 911, all of you are familiar with GM 911. I will remind you, last week I gave like a year-end update on some statistical information. If you remember, GM 911 took well over 400,000 calls last year, which is tremendous. It's even hard to think of them taking that many calls. So the reason I say that first bullet point is our CAD system, which is our call aid and dispatch system, which is tremendously important. Again, if you're thinking back to the number of calls they took, if you think about this, our GM 911 system doesn't only dispatch our Greensboro Police and our Greensboro Fire, but they also dispatch Guilford County EMS, the Guilford County Sheriff's Office, also all of the Guilford County's fire department, which are a number of them. So this upgrade to this system is going to be tremendous for all of our public safety partners that are part of that network. And it's been a challenging process, but I give kudos to Director Jones, Melanie Jones, and her staff for what they've done. Shifting to Melanie, I do want to highlight a lot of the work that she's done, but what it's going to mean to us. I know that I saw some of you either reposted or posted some of the article that Fox 8 ran about Melanie's leadership role and what she's doing to advocate for those that are telecommunicators and re-identifying how they're classified. If you haven't seen that, please take some time to go look at that Fox 8 article. The reason I highlight that is Melanie let me know that the national board has asked her for permission to utilize that for national promotion of this effort. So you all, as a local body, are ahead of the curve, I would say, in the resolution that you passed. So thank you for that, and we'll keep you updated where that goes.
I did speak to Melanie about making sure our delegation gets.
The next one, getting into our fire department, our Campus Park. If you have not seen any information on that, any of the media release, this is a tremendous program that our fire department, one of our young female firefighters, minority female, a couple of years ago came to the chief to talk about the idea that she was a part of in Charlotte. We've taken it on and we've continued to move it, continuing to try and grow this so that we can attract high school age females into our fire service. Again, I won't read through the description, but as you can see, this is something that we're excited about to have here for our fire department and what it can do, what it can lead to for the diversity of our fire department in the future. The next one, real quickly, I don't want to spend too much time here, but I did want to give you some idea of the importance of where we're going. If you remember our last work session, Chief Robinson came before you all to talk about some of the need for growth and some of the ideas and the forecasting that he's doing with our fire station. I've talked with Councilwoman Hightower in the past and some other folks about the need for the growth growth in that area, but to continue to make sure that we get ahead of that curve and identify where we need new, whether it's in the fire station. Also on the left, if you see, there's some enhancements and some renovations that we're doing. Station 14, which is on Summit Avenue, is going to be first up, and we prioritize it by age of the location as well as a couple different metrics to be able to identify the prioritization list. As you go on down through Station 8, which is Coliseum, Station 10 is Gate City, and then Station 40, Pisgah Church, and so those are in the line for our renovations. But again, as you'll look, the fire department has done a great job at looking at how we're growing as a city and where our needs are as it relates to our fire service. Next one. So this is a repeat slide for you all, but I did want to highlight this before we go into some of the things that our police department is going to do in the coming year. I can't sing this praise enough for what our police department has done. Chief Thompson and his staff are preparing to do a media blast on this. I can tell you they wanted to delay it to some degree because of the way the end of the year stats come out from the FBI. They wanted to make sure when they do this article that they're 100% right. But ultimately our major stats, which are homicide and our aggravated assault. I remember about a couple of years ago, I thought, I ain't gonna call her out, but I thought she was a little ambitious in a huge decrease in violent crime and homicide. But we met it, and I'm really excited. I'm excited for us to be able to achieve that, but also appreciative of you as a council for continuing to allow us to do some of the things and implement some of the strategies that we've had in the last couple of years. And as you can see, a 22% decrease in a year is amazing. And then 33% over 2 years. So the next slide, to continue that trend, I've talked with new Chief Thompson, who's here, but I promised that y'all would invite him. He's going to continue a few programs that we will provide information and updates on. Our license plate reader program is absolutely exploding. Our communities are really excited about being able to have this type of technology in our in their areas where we've seen crime historically. This also allows us to solve more crimes. That's one thing that we had uphill challenges on for quite some time, is being able to identify people who might be suspects. That next one, the FUSIS, is an innovative camera system program that I believe our new chief was the genesis of that idea back in his day in doing research. And then on down, also, I'll give him credit for BHART expansion. That BHART expansion, not to confuse it with our behavioral health team, which are the clinicians, but our sworn police officer squad added position based on a STAR grant, which was a paramedic position, which you all know that oftentimes when officers, or we have these calls, the person is not just experiencing mental health issues, but they quite honestly can have some type of substance abuse issue. So we saw that they were ahead of the curve and were able to add that. This is a partnership with our Gilbert County EMS, who has also always been a tremendous partner. And moving forward, the chief and I discussed hoping to push out even more information as the community-based violence intervention and improvement grant. I'm sure some of you have heard about it. It's a pretty large grant. We were one of only, am I right, Chief, 4 cities across the nation, 4 or 6? 6 cities across the nation that received this grant from the federal government. I do attribute it to the work of the police department, our community engagement office that applied for this grant. This is really going to allow us to continue. I know last year, a lot of you were interactive with the community connectors, some things that they did in our community, and bringing resources and just a number of things that are helpful and impactful in our community. So that's going to allow us to bolster. The Public Safety Partnership Grant is another grant that we were amongst a very low number of cities that were awarded this. This is going to allow the chief and the police department to do some technical training and assistance It might not be associated with a dollar amount, but it will be helpful with training and some things that can continue to help our police department advance in some areas that they need. The last bullet point there is our neighborhood club idea. That's something that, again, before Chief Thompson became the chief, he began to work on that as an idea that he saw. That's something that he and I are excited about. I know he's had a few council conversations regarding how that's going to roll out, but ultimately, I can tell you that idea is geared to stabilize our neighborhoods, to bring resources to neighborhoods, and to help with the overall quality of life in neighborhoods that traditionally have experienced high crime or high issues. The last slide rounding it out is Office of Community Safety. There's a timeline in your packet, but I won't go completely through that timeline, but just so you know, I am very appreciative. One of our new city manager allowed me to think outside of the box and then allowing you, for you as council, to support this idea. The Office of Community Safety, I feel like the ceiling, the sky's the ceiling for this office, and our new manager in that area, Letitia McNeil, to be able to do some comprehensive violence strategies. We've hired the violence prevention coordinator, a gentleman who's done some work in this area. We've not done media outflash yet, but I can tell you in this room, Arthur Durham has accepted a position to be our violence prevention coordinator for the city, which I'm very excited about with his reputation with work in this area. The next step to add to that team, we're working on a law enforcement assistance diversion program, which ultimately will hire a coordinator to manage that portion and work close with our police department in that area. And I think that's it.
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be a few questions, comments.
Good job, Greg.
Okay, so seems like,
Yeah, like I did, heard this last week, so. I have no
Okay.
question.
if there's none, I'd like us to go through the dashboard first.
Just one quick statement. I had asked Melanie yesterday for how many calls the police department responded to in 2022. And I believe the number she gave me was 205,136. That is the number of calls that GPD responded to, not fire department, but GPD specifically. I think that is a huge number of calls. It also then shows the glaring reason why we need to be aggressive when it comes to hiring and retaining police officers, because when you take the number of officers we have and you put it across those 205,000 responses, that really dwindles that number down.
Madam Mayor, you're very right. You know how that number compares to previous years?
I didn't ask, but I can get that.
I was just gonna say, it would help when we get some of these numbers. It would be helpful to me, much like Trey is doing now, to go compare to last year. So we know how are these numbers trending? Are we, and that's true with all the departments. I think, Trey, thank you for adding that to the number this year so that we can kind of get a feel for it. But with most of the stats that we get, even libraries or workforce development or economic incentives or whatever, it'd be helpful to have some context of comparing.
And I'm sure we can get that
Jeez,
number pretty quickly.
Context trend lines on it.
Yeah, just for historical data, we do hover around the 200,000 call mark. We've seen it go as high as 225, 230,000. And we've seen it dip as low as 180, 185,000. It just that's probably 200,000 is probably a good average to say we will be in that range every year. And that will probably go back, say, 7, 8 years.
But we're doing it with fewer officers, so the per officer call is dramatically going up, even though the number's staying about the same.
And those are calls that GPD was dispatched to, not the calls that they stopped saying they have made.
Correct.
So that number is even higher when you add in.
400, 400.
Okay. Mary Kay?
Yes, the two quick things, so, as we all know, trying to retain police officers and hire, but also just think about the GM 911 that are getting all those calls initially. So I know they're hurting for staff as well, so kind of want to put that out there. And also, I know that we did a study about, a lot of the officers being on calls were to false alarms, and we were going to look into that to see what could help alleviate that. I remember, and I can't quite remember specifically what it was, but
Great point. I think there's, in our next session, when we come to our retreat session, I'm hoping the chief and I talked about a few of those things, some of our non-conventional ways to alleviate those calls. I'm hoping that we'll be able to pull together and have more information. That one, as well as the information, I think one that the mayor worked on with the response to crashes or.
right.
So all of those are, I'm working with the chief to package them together, to present to you all at one time.
You know, because like fender benders, they don't necessarily.
What, you know, it's interesting, when we filed that bill, CP 303, there were at least 3 other communities that filed bills and wanted to tag on to ours, which was, I think, part of the problem, why we couldn't get ours through.
Right.
Trey just said the calls year before were 208,504. And those, Mary Kay was talking about GM 911. Those are just the police calls, they're not the fire. and the
Right.
sheriff's. So, you know, you take that number, and that number is much more than the number of calls that they take.
Yeah, I think you said 400,000.
Yeah.
A lot of calls.
Okay, so we'll turn to ACM Davies to walk us through this last set of.
Did you have a comment? I see you there shaking your head.
No, I just think public safety department's gonna be fine because they have a job to do. And we just spend a lot of time talking about it. Don't talk about some of the other departments.
Well, public safety is the number one concern on just.
I think it's gonna be fine because they know that it's a concern. They know what we need to do. They know we need it. They know what we need. And I just listen at the company. That's all. It's a concern for everybody. Get that. I do.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. One of the real challenges that manager has given us in each year plus is better ways to get data to you and to the community, particularly using things like dashboards and web apps, ways that we can take mountains of information and present it to you in an easier format that you can get to and answer questions that you get. And today, IT Director Roger Roberts, Steve Avery from our GIS division are here to show you something that we're about ready to launch, that we hope you'll find user-friendly and something that you can almost have in your hip pocket to find information about districts at a glance and the community as a whole. So, Roger.
So, thank you, Larry. One of the things that it's been a running thing through this meeting here is data. We have data on everything, and it's impossible to put your finger on everything at a moment's notice. So about, yes, sir, it was August, September, we were asked as a department to come up with a first stab at proposal. There's tons of data out there. So a first stab at how to put a lot of this information at your fingertips. A few things that were from that conversation is you wanted to look at our locations of our city assets and services. Things that are primarily static, and then take a dive into some of the things that we can, that the data updates on a more frequent basis. So I want to show you here, for example, we'll get into the demo where a lot of this is actually shown, but some of the things that we can, an examples of things that we're going to show you here is locations of fire stations. We all know we have fire stations. We know, I think it's something like 26 fire stations.
But if we're wanting to know exactly how many fire stations are in, Councilwoman Hightower's district, she knows, I know you know, but we want to make it easier so you can just put that at your fingertips. Also, more information that any one person can remember, like who's the center director for Peter Rexon? Yeah, Parks and Rec may know, but if they ask a council person, that 90% chance they're gonna know, but 10% chance they're gonna have to look it up. So that's one of the things that this application can show us. Not only the things that are static, but also the things that are dynamic. I know we've talked a lot about how Greensboro is growing, the areas of Greensboro that are growing. And it all, we know because we see it every day, but can we put a dollar amount on what's happening, where the building permits are being approved? Again, that's something that this application can do, as well as some historical data. Do we know what's happened? Like you said, we all know what happened in 2019, but can we actually put a push pin and say there was 900 building permits approved in 2019? Maybe some can, but for those that can't, we want to put that information at your fingertips. So I want to attempt to, I know that we've got people viewing from Zoom, so I'm going to attempt to reshare this as a, Peter, you may have to help me, but I'm going to attempt to reshare the dashboard and so everyone can see it. Yeah, you're gonna have to help me. Okay. Share screen, dashboard. I got you. So one of the things that, ladies and gentlemen, that's PJ. One of the things that we talked about earlier, and you can see from here, is this is our city that we live in, city that we love to provide services for. And on the top of this city, this map you're seeing in front of you, all of the many resources that we provide. We just finished talking about public safety. So if we wanted to kind of filter and look at where are certain resources at, we talked about the 26 fire stations. You have 26 fire stations. We've selected that, and we'll be able to focus on just those fire stations. And if we wanted to know, for example, there's 26 fire stations as a whole, but how many are in Councilmember Hightower's district? So we're allowed to then focus in on her district. That number drops from 26 to 8. So that'll allow us to kind of get a better view at a couple of clicks on certain information. Now, to go into a little bit more detail, this is a lot of information just to click through like that. So we made an attempt to group like services together so you can get a better view on what's going on in. We talked a little bit about fire, which is community safety. Try to do this one more time. Let's look at parks. So if we want to look at our parks, so this is an overall view, how many parks and things that we consider in our parks groups, the resources that we have. If we wanted to say, we want to focus on District 2. And at a glance, we'll see now out of all of the Parks and Rec centers we have in District 2, we've got 8 Parks and Rec centers. We've got, looks like 4 buildings that we consider like cultural and sporting facilities. I want to take a moment to kind of focus in on where this data is coming from. This tool is a view into existing data. We didn't just, and we would love to say we could in 3 months after getting the request, but we didn't build this data set from anything. This data is something that the city has built over time. This is a single view into that data set. So with this, we can go back into that, to the scrub and show that there are 4 athletic facilities in District 2. You want to say you decide now that we want to know the athletic centers in District, that's changed a little bit, just to freshen it up a little bit. And we don't want to look at parks, we just want to look at the remaining city facilities. I heard a little bit ago, we talked about deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance happens throughout every city facility, but not just at parks, at MMOB, at the library, at different places throughout the city. So if we want to know where our city facilities at, of course, we know them. We can do a list on them through this application and show fleet services, our GTA facility. On our libraries, for example, let's look at District 3. We can show a list of public libraries in District 3. But we don't know I don't know, I'll personalize it. I don't know all about the Benjamin Library that I probably should. So with this, also give us the ability to this view into this existing data is link out to the website for Benjamin Library that will show you all the events that are going on, the location, telephone numbers, that branch manager that we mentioned a little bit earlier. This tool allows you to do that. Now, that's great for stuff that doesn't change. I know British listening, but I don't know when Benjamin was built, so I'll have to hear that later. But we don't really change the facilities that much. What we do actually change, and what we want to see a lot more of, is growth in our communities. So what we looked at is one of the things that shows, kind of lets us put our finger on the pulse on what's going on, are the development activities in our area. Before I get too deep into this portion, because
Let me just interrupt. So where he's moving now is from what you originally called static to more active information.
Yeah.
So the databases he's going to show you now are actually things that need updated on a daily basis. This is an ability for you to get up real-time information, building permits, applications, construction value, and so.
Is it live?
And
Is it live yet?
is it live yet? The data itself, this website, you can have access to. I'll make sure I get it to the clerk, so everyone that doesn't already have it.
That's what I'm saying.
No, it's just,
Because we tried to find it.
no, it's not.
Oh, this is.
Oh, yeah, in the presentation, I'm talking about from the community.
As
Somebody's
it's
in
not
the
here.
No, we wanted to make sure that we present this to you first before.
Right.
it comes to.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The permit piece you're talking about, there is a website. of the
Yes.
building permit already.
It's good.
So are
No
you-
way to get-
Are you're incorporating that into this? Because that building permit website doesn't work. For me.
This one's much better.
it
This one's
doesn't
much
work for me.
Yeah, and I don't want to steal Steve's thunder. That, to answer your question, yes, that building permitting application is right here. So there's actually data that is, again, like I said, we didn't create anew for this presentation. We're linking to data that we already have,
Okay.
but it looks a lot better, a lot easier. to
See,
follow.
that's what building permits look.
Yes, yes.
It's-
That's a lot.
That's, yeah, even when you scale it down to the district,
Mhm.
you start looking, it moves on, you can't capture it. And I can,
This will be a lot different.
this will be a lot different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yes, sir.
She's scroll down, I want to see that number in District 5. I just want to show that District 3 has the least amount of active construction value per district.
What's
That's not
Two.
running compared to-
District 2 has 100, 200. Well, here we pass it.
now,
It's a big thing.
so, so to council member, Bethany's point. This, this, it's because of these size. I can make it larger. It's just, there's so much data here
Yeah.
that it's hard to put something on one side.
That's boom, that's all that is. That's boom.
But it's also, think about it, it's also areas where you have only opportunities for infield development
Right.
versus area where you have green fields. Where you have green
Half
fields.
of it, but-
And when they get something, but you go.
City spends money and the city spends money in District 5.
Good question, go back to the last slide.
Do I have to go back to the last?
Just for a moment, what is the time frame that's captured in there?
Okay, so that's an absolute amazing point. So in our sources button right here, it does talk about when that date. I said that date is more dynamic. So the active building permits, the construction value, that's grabbed every day at 8 p.m.
It was just active, so if the building permit is open since, for 20 years ago, it's in there, or if it's one day, it's in there, it's all in there, it's not time bound by the calendar.
The checks in the mail, because
Okay,
this application also shows you exactly what you were asking.
okay,
So if we were to dive into, let's say, District 4, we'll see not only the active, and I'm sorry that this is, I need to fix this a little better. We'll show not only the active, but also the completed permit. So if I wanted to filter on the active permits, let me think about this a little better.
Council also, it's not tied to this.
okay.
Okay,
It's live. So, right.
yes, ma'am. We ain't got no construction.
If I have a question from someone and it says, what about the whole city of Greensboro? I'm gonna have to go in and add these up.
No.
No.
Actually,
Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe
The
it's
whole
right,
city.
I believe it's right here.
There you go. Thank you.
And that is off of this filter. So if you were asked that question, that I would say, what is the active permit
In the city of
in the
Greensboro.
city of Greensboro? So we will highlight active,
Okay.
then so you don't have any filters here.
Okay.
And this is your commercial value and residential value.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
so that's for all 5, that's the whole city.
Right.
So in 2019, 2018, we had 4,271 permits. Have we, figured out our building and inspections replacement for Don Sheffield yet?
Mhm.
You know, he said he's retiring in probably 27 days. Don Sheffield,
Now, the Sheffield, the chief building.
that's
I
all.
was looking for. Yeah, which-
Yeah, they'll let us. For their. They've got a ladder system of hiring people. So that we can fire.
So when you say, that it's kind of live as well, let me ask you this. Can you tell where there's sidewalk projects? Has that been factored in here too?
So
Because
what
if you wanted to look, I get a lot of, when is this sidewalk project gonna start? You know, Glendale or something like that. Would you be able to look and say, okay, this project is pending, this project is beginning, whatever? So I'll answer that kind of down the middle. Again, this is a window into existing data. And I've been fortunate to have great hires. So one of those great hires is Steve Avery, right behind us. That will probably be better at answering where that information is. So, and I don't know, Steve, can you take a stab at that? Or is that one of those questions that we'll write down?
Let me
and
take
get
this
to?
down.
Yeah.
So, the answer is no, we don't, because we don't have a good data on our own activities tied into this. This is private commercial activity. So one of the things that you've already highlighted for Councilman Hightower is we need a way to get city plans as part of the database that you can access quickly and easily. Because right now, this one would not show you where a proposed sidewalk is or what it's.
It will tell you the miles of sidewalks, right? If you go on that
If
transportation.
we have captured it as a static asset, we might have to tell you.
Yes, you
District, how many miles of sidewalk.
Some of that.
But we wouldn't, we right now,
Yes,
we
sir.
got 70, 75, we got total miles.
So we'll
But
give
we
you
don't
total
have-
miles.
But we don't have
But we
project.
don't have the project.
Yes, project.
So my understanding is that we're working on that.
Yep.
That
That helps, that's something we can improve on.
Right, yeah.
I just want to point out on this while we're looking at it, that we've got all that business development going into District 5 out near the airport. And District 5 has a total in the whole district of 80 bus stops. And there is nothing, no bus stops out where any of the businesses are coming. So that's just something we need to address.
To me, again, this is part of, we say that at the city, we are purpose-driven, people-centered and data-informed. And this is part of that whole data-informed process. I feel that as a manager walking through in the door, that sometimes what we call priorities were not really data-informed. They were pretty much because people complain about them. So they were not necessarily objective, but this allows us to be more subjective. So you grow, because in District 5, that's where you have most green fields, right? That's where you're gonna have most development. And where you have most development, if you have fewer GTA bus stops, that's a contradiction. And that's where it should inform our budget and process, it should inform our priorities. And so this shows our lack, but it also shows our imbalance. Because if you go to community safety, I think it is, you're going to see that we have 3 hospitals, or 3 medical facilities.
Yeah.
And you will see that their concentration is so inequitable. Where they're located, people will have to drive so far from other parts of the city to get there. Could that be part of why there's so many calls? And also why it takes a long time to get there? I think those are the things that you see all those 3 hospitals, see where they're located in the map. And if you were living in District 5 or you live at the further end of District 2 or District 3, getting to those places is really challenging.
Well, but Todd, that's not necessarily an accurate statement, because that's in the center of the city.
But that
And
was,
that's, so everybody has to get there. That includes urgent cares and other.
it doesn't, but when you think about it, that those hospitals were built at the time when the city was only this.
Yeah.
And that hasn't shifted since the city has been growing. You're right, there's still medical doctors' offices, there is urgent cares and all of that. But trauma centers are not located everywhere. And so this is supposed to allow us that snapshot into where are the things that we want to be pushing for, whether, because you make a good point, if your district is so large, but you have so few bus stops, or the district is so far away from areas of community safety, then we need to start thinking about how we budget for those things and how we demand for those.
Again, I just, as you go down, other than the building permits where Boone really throws District 5 out, but if you look at sidewalks, parks, trails, bus stops, libraries, you look at city facilities, park, all of that. District 5 is like dropped off of that. And I just think that that's something that we need to pay attention to.
And that's the beauty of having this type of data and having this type of view, because the whole tenor of this room changed when the data popped up, and then everybody's looking at, where there are surpluses, where there's deficits. And it helps to drive our vision as to what we should be focused on and concentrating. It's beautiful. Thank you, Brad.
So what we'd like to do is provide this to you all to use, and try to break. And let us know which slides aren't working, which buttons don't do anything, and most importantly, what data is. What were you hoping that you might find about your council district or the city in the whole that wasn't there? And that gives us an opportunity to just.
What about the last one?
Yes, on that.
The 9 hole, of course, it was cut, the 9 hole, gone.
If we just go out and redo.
Well, why shouldn't you have? It needs to be invested in East Greensboro, it's about time. The building's 60 years old, so investment needs to have happened here.
So I'm having trouble getting to that page where it's got
The dashboard.
yeah, that's name, but.
You having trouble getting?
So I've got it where it says districts, somebody said before.
How do you take the districts off?
You have to click on it again,
Click on what again?
the district, the same one.
So I want to see what the total is, mine looks slightly different than
On the iPad, it doesn't
yours.
seem to work.
It doesn't have that left-hand column in it.
Doesn't have a
Where it's
left
got
hand
the
column.
total.
Okay, we can definitely, I can sit down with you in a moment and go through that, because it's, and if there's a vote, then thank you for finding it, you know, work and go.
If you're using a different, web browser and something doesn't work, let us know so we can fix that as well. But I do want to acknowledge Steve Avery and his team and GIS. I mean, this has just been some tremendous work.
Great.
I'm very proud of it.
Team did this right.
Absolutely.
I think you all need to enter this into one of those national things. I know we got it for our website. And I think this would be a governmental.
He's doing it right.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you. Thank y'all for the time.
Thank you.
Oh,
If you, Brian, you can get us back to,
With this one, then we'll.
Do we have any more suggestions? We'll just let us know. Thank you. Thank you.
one other update we wanted to provide for you, comes from our Human Resources Department, and this is a program that's been about 3 years in the making or 3 years in the developing. It is really starting to pay dividends. So we feel like this is a good time to bring it to your attention. This is our leadership development program. Irish Good, Katie Crawford here from organizational development to help you give you just a very quick overview of the program. So I'll turn it over now to Irish and Katie.
Rodney, we got it.
I want to say I appreciate the opportunity to share with you how the employees within the city of Greensboro inspires creativity, influence positive change, improves the organizational culture, and organizational success. And that is through transformational leadership. It impacts people, performance, and results. I want to share a little bit about transformational leadership. It creates change and movement in organization, which influences new visions and new possibilities. What is transformational leadership? It inspires employers to thrive beyond required expectations and to work towards a shared vision. And I think that's important as an organization, that we have those shared visions in terms of what we want to accomplish and what we can achieve. Looking at transformational leadership within the organization, in 2019, the city of Greensboro incorporated the transformational leadership theory within its citywide development leadership training series. And there are 3 key concepts of that. One is leading self, leading others, and leading the organization. And I think with those particular avenues and what individuals need to do to identify, how do I lead myself?
how do I improve me first in terms of being self-aware, exploring biases, being innovative thinking, and how we do that within ourselves determine how we're able to lead others and how we can influence positive change. And as we do that, we move on to how we lead organizations. How can I, as an individual, move that organization to the next level? And how being a transformational leadership gives me those skills and abilities to be able to think like a transformational leader. So I think these three concepts are really powerful in terms of transformational leadership. Within our leadership program, we have identified various levels of trainings, and there's 5 levels. We start with foundations of policy up to leadership edge, thinking that, foundations of policies, that's where we're training most of our frontline employees, giving them baseline skills on how to be good leaders, how to influence change. How can I, as a individual leader, whether formal or informal leader, influence change that is positive, that can move the organization, learning about city policies, procedures, things of that nature. With those trainings in the middle of foundation and leadership edge is where we're training managers, supervisors on how they can continue to develop their skills, to be better leaders, and to really understand how to make the organization great with the ability to work with their team and how to motivate them, how to have them think about being creative and what we can do. And so most of our training programs range from 6 weeks up to 8 months. And I think that's a gauge or a timeline that allow our participants to really engage in a lot of theoretical work, practical work, and how they apply those leadership skills to the work that they do. The Leadership Edge group, they're the ones that actually presented a presentation to you all back in September on the MOVE program, which is making ownership valuable for employees. And so that was some of the work that they do in terms of learning to be more strategic and how they can align what they've learned to the program and apply it to what we're doing within the city. So from September 2019 to December, there have been approximately 300 employees within the organization that have completed various programs within that development track. Employees consist of, like I said, frontline employees all the way up to executive senior management employees. The demographic makeup of those training sessions has been very diverse across the organization, which we encourage all employees from every department within the organization to participate in some of that development training. The training participants is a very diverse cohort group that goes to that training based on ethnicity, gender, as well as tenure within the organization. Whether you've been here a year or 20 years, we still want to develop you within the organization. I want to share with you some transformational success stories. We've had participants, like I said, over 300 to participate. It's always exciting to hear how development has changed people and what was their takeaways from those opportunities to be developed. And this is Letitia McNeil. She is one of our graduates from Systemic Leadership as well as Leadership Edge. And, she found that these trainings gave her a more comprehensive understanding of the organization functions and how to work together to support a mission and a vision. We have another success story, Ramon Johnson. He's in our Water Resources Department. And Ramon was definitely a very engaged participant in our program. And he was promoted during the time he was in one of our training sessions. And he said, the program helped me transition into my new role. I value the networking with my colleagues across the city. And that is powerful because when we collaborate and communicate with one another, we learn from each other. I mean, there's never a moment that we don't ever stop learning. And I think each of us in this room can say we're lifelong learners. And so I think that's extremely important.
And we just wanted to take this opportunity, first of all, Iris, thank you, Penny, thank your entire division, you're doing incredible work, and you don't often get to hear from them or hear about this kind of stuff in somewhat back office, but you talk so much about recruitment and retention of folks, and we want you to know that once people come here, we try to make their careers as best as possible. We really do try to make them career long runners. And you can slot anywhere in one of those 5 class groups that Iris pointed out. So you can come in as someone who's already, you may have been a leader where you were. That doesn't mean that you come in and your education stops. We still continue to develop. But our goal is to retain the best along with all the other strategies that we use. So thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, so thank you. I feel that that's also very important because we've all had the saying that culture beats leadership for lunch. And the best way to pivot culture is usually through training and education. And we've got a very good group here. But there's a lot that, and I heard from you with regards to also our human resources department, how we need to start making sure that it moves into that space of employees have a perception that they're here to support them, not only in terms of hiring, but also in terms of bettering the situation when they're here. So you just had a piece today, and I think over time you'll be hearing more from our HR department as well. But we were not able to cover a number of areas for you today, but we will come back. For example, everything related to infrastructure, economic development, growth with regards to planning, transportation, legislative growth. There's a lot of communications, community relations. There's just a lot that we could still cover. So we will come back. But I feel that the ones that we shared with you today are very key. It's the first time that we combine a lot of activities into a community services that you have from ACM McCray, and you're able also to hear from ACM Davis regards to Office of Community Safety, tying back to the position that you will approve in the current fiscal year budget. And then, of course, the dashboard, which I thought was going to really get you excited about the information that we have. We deliberately wanted that to come and at least towards the end, so you have an opportunity to really go through it. But before we launch it, if you will go more further into it and let us know areas where you're having challenges with it and get back to us, we'd definitely appreciate that.
I don't mind staying 10 more minutes and listening to the field ops. I don't know. I really don't mind.
I really would like to hear from you. I think they
We be especially, you know, feel like.
yeah, they don't get highlighted.
Well, I didn't want to. So that's why I had Penny here earlier, because I did not want to.
Yeah, I know.
Presentation today. But if we hear from field ops, and I get it, and I will also, there's a lot of things going on with field ops that are also interactive with other divisions as well. I mean, if you want us to do it in 10 minutes, we can, but I think it will leave more questions than answers if you just do 10 minutes.
Or maybe just an overview and then we have it. Yeah.
Get to that slide.
Okay.
I mean, unless you feel like we can have a more comprehensive, because I don't want them to feel like they always an
We're gonna come back with it.
like they're an act.
Yeah, today's intent was to hit highlights prior to your retreat, but most of these things should come back to you in a work session in greater
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah.
Field ops in particular, I mean, we've had some recent discussions, dare I say, about things that fall from trees that need to be removed. And I think there's some things that we'll need to discuss around that, some improvements that perhaps can be made. So, no, that's not right. Can you- As usual, for most of my career, bail me out. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Which one? It's going up.
Yeah, you gotta go up. You're gonna go like 30.
Keep going.
Go back down. Go back down. There.
Okay.
Hit the right.
So how do I just
Don't get this back to, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rodney. Star of the show, okay. So I won't spend a lot of time on this. In general, you know what we do. More recently, I think most of you communicated with us during the extreme cold, and you got to really get a sense of some of the things that we do during the most inclement weather times. But in general, we're dealing with a significant amount of vacancies right now, which is sort of compounded the notion of how we address things like leaf removal or even your trash removal. There were a few things that I wanted to go over because I think it's helpful sometimes to see the volume in which we deal with. I think this helps put things in perspective. So if you look at potholes, over 4,000, almost 4,500 potholes in a year. That's in addition to many of the things that we're trying to do from an environmental perspective. We absolutely need to come back to you at some point and have a discussion about the landfill. Because in our lifetime, we'll see that complete closure and we'll need to talk about how that works and what's going to happen. Look at this, almost 70,000 tons of garbage on an annual basis. That's significant. Recycling.
Do we know where the majority of the trash comes from? Do we have?
It's a big one.
I think, actually, that's an excellent question. I'd love to break that down. So let me get something that helps me articulate that a little better. Recycling, of course, we've had some challenges with recycling. It's a topic we probably need to come back to and address again. Everything from glass to where our receptacles are to the contamination of our recycling, which creates all sorts of predicaments for staffing. And then, of course, you see the numbers there with regard to bulk. Things that you don't necessarily think about on the regular is how many trees we have to remove for the roadway. So, and Parks and Recreation actually is our backup on that, and we're very thankful for that. So, this recent weather event where we had high wind gusts, and Hugh pointed out to me well in advance of the event that we might have that. And I said, what? So I'll give you all the credit in the world for reminding me we may be facing that. We had tons of trees fall during extreme conditions and then complicated by power outages. So we had to jump on those rather quickly. 585 from in a year doesn't sound like much, but understand that when we're doing that in conditions that are sometimes complicated. And that's dealing with traffic and that's dealing with whatever's going on at the time weather-wise. And then 70 tons of litter from the road. Now, had I gone over my full presentation, I would tell you that one of the things we want to do through community relations is really focus on a litter campaign this year. I know you all have heard significantly from our residents that trash is picked up. We could probably debate why that has occurred, but it did seem to get worse during the pandemic. And we've got to have a concentrated effort. So Nasha and I talked about a refocus on Adopt a Street, Adopt a Highway, some strategic things, D1, D2 have done Love Your Block. I think there's some expansion there that we can look at, but it's going to take an all hands on deck approach. We did want to put before you, as proud as we are of Field Ops and the great work that they do, we wanted to remind you that there are some things that are looming that we have to address sooner rather than later. Staffing is one of those things. We're going to have to continue to look at how we deal with a lack of supply in terms of staffing. Staffing for our employees is one element. But when you talk about a lack of supply, you're also talking about contractors. Contractors are often spread really thin right now. So we've been challenged this year, just to be quite honest. And we have crews that are not just working overtime, but I'll give you, for instance, both water resources and field ops during that 6-degree weather or whatever it was, felt much, much colder. We had crews that were not only working after they're 40, but they were going home for maybe a couple of hours, getting just enough sleep to go back on rotation. We brought them back in. We're having to use the same crews over and over again in those situations. So imagine coming back in next week and then dealing with all the other duties that we deal with on a regular basis. So that needs to be a focus for us.
Chris, are we in staffing?
I'll get you an exact number. It was, I remember the last time we talked about it, it was pretty high.
It was
I
right.
know for the city overall, I think we have almost 400 vacancies right now. So it's pretty significant. So long-term use of White Street landfill, we absolutely want you involved in the conversation. Many of you were here with me till 1 o'clock in the morning on some of those nights that we discussed White Street in the first place. What I will say is that we need to include our new Office of Sustainability in that discussion because there's some opportunities there. It's not simply a matter of walking away. We need to look at what that functions as. And as we are having all this great development, let's think about this. So if we take commercial refuse right now and think of all the great development, we didn't get to go over today, but I was going to give you some stats and I'll email this to you on the number of permits we've seen in the past couple of years, the number of inspections we've done. All this indicates, in fact, may or may not have been able to go over some of our growth from a development standpoint. All this indicates that we have lots of building going on. And that's a good thing, but it also means many more materials are going there and we could end up reaching its full lifespan quicker than we thought. So it's something we need to start planning for now. I think we need to do that in another work session. Outside of that, obviously, we've had some challenges around the cost of doing business. We're going to have to continue to look at how we negotiate some of the contracts we have for hauling and some of our disposal. That cost has gone up for us, which means it's gone up for our contractors as well. We'll need to look at how we manage that. We do, in fact, believe that there are some opportunities around leaf removal, and I'm sure the emails will probably start here in the next 5 minutes for me just saying that. Everybody loves the leaf removal. I love leaf removal, but here's the challenge. What you're putting in, first of all, Greensboro is one of the only places that uses plastic still to do that. So, you know, plastic bags, nobody else does that anymore.
What do they do?
They do carts, they do what's called a leaf burrito, they do paper.
It's so cool. We're gonna.
But it's much more environmentally friendly. So that's one thing that we probably should look at immediately, is doing something that's better for our environment. The presentation that I had, which I think we're probably gonna have to skip over, had a picture of the landfill and all the plastic bags that are sitting there that we have to tear through and sort out.
Yeah. So that mess up our landfill too, plastic.
It does.
bags.
I think you all have pointed out on occasion the complication with stormwater drains. Yes, we have leaf fall anyway, but it's complicated by the fact that many people still put their leaves out in the street, and then we get inclement weather. It creates a hazard for us, so there's an additional cost. The way we're handling yard waste is really challenging for our employees. We've had about $500,000 worth of workers' comp claims over the past so many years. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 years. We've had $500,000 worth of workers' comp claims. As a person who used to get your garbage and had to lift 50-gallon drums, I can tell you that it wreaks havoc on your body over time. And this is one of those additional things that we do that complicates. So these are just some surface things that I would say right off the cuff we should look at. I know there's been some debate about cost and how that works. I think there's also an environmental piece that we need to address. So we just wanted to let you know that that's something we're working on. We're evaluating. We'll bring it back to you for further dialogue. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer questions about field ops. I would love an opportunity to come back at some point and talk about economic development. Some of the things that we're seeing from an inspections standpoint, the number of permits we're seeing, pretty impressive. Greensboro is definitely growing, but we've got to be planning for the infrastructure to support it as it grows. So
I would love to know more about the burrito thing, because I think we gotta figure a way to get those leaves out of the streets.
yeah, I think we were actually having, if I remember correctly, we were doing an evaluation this week from a vendor. It's almost like using a tarp that has handles, and then you zip it up once you get the leaves on the tarp.
Would that, okay, so
You need a couple of
would that be something we would pick up and haul away? Huh?
He said we need a couple for you.
You, boom, get it out your mouth.
I'm with
Oh,
you.
please don't make no
I
talk.
literally did not eat. I appreciate it.
But would you pick it up Would we pick it up
You would, my concern about that is,
and leave it
yeah, I think
with them?
what you're getting to is it would still be a pickup measure.
Oh.
And my concern about that, we're evaluating it now to see how much better that would be than, picking up multiple bags, what have you. There would certainly be a limitation with that. So you'd be picking up less of them likely if we put some parameters on it. I think it's an easier lift than the way that they're constructed. But I still have a concern that that is another push them out, put them on something, lift, haul. As opposed to what we do now with your garbage and recycling, which is you get them in a can, we use a machine that's automated and we put them in the truck. But we're still doing some evaluation on that, so I would ask for a little additional time. We just made our final sweep on the first phase of leaf removal, and we've got more to go, but that's what came after we did our initial sweep.
I'd be interested in hearing how our glass recycling that actually gets recycled glass. Now versus when we were doing house pickup, because I know that when we were doing door-to-door pickup, we threw out so much of it because it was contaminated. And I'm just curious in terms of the net of what we're actually recycling now versus then, how that's different.
Yeah.
People commented to me that they almost think we recycle or we recover more now than we did when we were going door to door because so much was contaminated previously. And, when it gets to how much really gets recycled, we're probably about on track with where we were. I have no idea, but
I would love to provide that. Give me some time to gather that. I do know that the animation piece is better as a result of, because it's a more focused effort. But I'll get you some exact numbers. I think we need to continue to evaluate it too, because I understand the sake and the ease of having it picked up where you are. It just was not working in the current program, and with so many things, we need to continue to evaluate for best effort. Now that we've got Dr. Dorstein on board, I'd also look to see, are there other opportunities that we have for dealing with, whether it be glass or any of these other things that we're hauling.
And then, Chris, going back to the recycling, I do apologize. And I know that there are a lot of factors involved there, from staffing to schedules and like. Is there a timeline when you think that that process will be complete?
I'd love to get something back to you in February because I think the topic is very relevant. I'm disappointed we're still talking about leaves in January. I think a lot of communities have moved on from the topic, and I think part of the reason that we're still dealing with it is not just staffing, but it's the way that we retrieve. Weather's a factor, staffing's a factor, but the way that we retrieve is such an awkward process that can be complicated by so many factors. Many of your roads here in Greensboro are narrow, they're older roads, and if people park on both sides, guess what?
You can't get.
It's really hard to get that truck through. So there's so many factors that weigh into that. I'd like to get you some initial information in February so you can understand, here are the things that we're dealing with regard to staffing, with regard to the way we do it, with regard to the environment, and maybe the fact that, at least in our look of other cities, people aren't doing it the same way we are. We're kind of the last holdout. It's not to say that it's not good, but we should be looking to see if there's a better way to do it for our employees, for our residents, for the environment. And I hope to get that information to you in February. I think it probably will require some additional, not only dialogue amongst this group, but some additional exploration.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, and I think also the fact, I think you said it, that the leaves fell later than usual, so the crews have gone by, nothing to pick up, and then when the leaves had fallen, now it's created the bottleneck because there are other things that had to be done. The staffing and the weather.
In some cases, to be quite honest, we can make our first pass and folks are putting leaves right back out after that first pass. So it's a challenge to say the least. We've talked about it for years. You all know that. We've all had this conversation. I think what we've got to do now is look at a menu or a buffet of things that we should consider, and then talk about whatever that best option is. And then the Sustainability Council is going
We're looking at it, yeah.
to have a conversation around it, which I think is very helpful because we've dedicated ourselves to a recent adoption to a more sustainable approach to doing business, and this would be one of those things that should at least be evaluated.
And I was just gonna mention, Sharon and I brought this up years ago, and we got knocked down pretty quick, but now that we see, and I brought it up, the council, the public safety hazard, because you can't get through the streets, how's an ambulance gonna get through that street? The trucks can't get through the street, and so many things like that, and then watching the poor field ops guys or whoever subcontracted try to pick up wet leaves. I mean, you sit there and you go, oh my gosh, because they don't suck up in the vacuum very well. They're having to sit there and keep raking them. And it's just tough to watch.
And I've seen a couple of piles where the tree limbs are sticking out. So
Yeah.
people aren't even, they're just raking everything to the street. And so then you gotta stop, pull the limbs out, and separate them from the leaves because they're sticking in the way. So you don't know what is in the leaves, glass, it's just dangerous.
And I
just don't see it being a good service.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of things we're gonna be looking at, Chris, but I also know that there are some communities, they're purchasing these biodegradable bags, things like that.
That has become very popular, good for the environment, certainly manageable. I mean, you still have to retrieve, but there's usually a limitation on how many bags at a time.
Right,
But obviously paper is a much better product for the environment.
just throwing it out there, thank you.
Yeah, that'll definitely be part of the evaluation.
I want to consider doing a pilot program to offer those kind of bags as an incentive. To use it, we will provide you the bags.
It could be, I mean, in some communities, they use narrower vehicles now. Because I think a garbage truck from Miro to Miro is about 12.
Things are huge.
And so that could be problematic also.
We'll work on it, we'll come back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Under transportation, when you come back, when you all talk about the wayfinding signs, because they have just disappeared into thin air.
Yeah, I think we need to, I know we have had some discussion. Way back, I think it probably needs to be a more recent discussion.
It's pre-pandemic.
I think in particular, had I gotten into the economic development piece, and I'll send out, I had shared with the mayor yesterday, a little bit of our end of year report, and it's pretty exciting to see how much we accomplished in a year in terms of economic development. The other thing that dawns on me is we've got to be more intentional about our gateways and things that people see as they're either living here or visiting here. As you all know, we've talked about this before, a lot of our key entry points, those signs date back quite a way, let's say the 70s.
Yeah.
So it's time to evaluate that, but I think we have some information to bring back soon and have a deeper dialogue.
So we also need to talk to NCDOT. A lot of the highway signs have lost their reflectivity or something, so that when you're going down the highway, a lot of the Greensboro exit signs are kind of half-ass looking. And I think we're. Yeah. Yes,
Special G.
it's a special finish.
Okay.
But I think we have also identify those and ask NCDOT for some support and those signs.
I would agree.
Especially out near, I know that they're bad out near the airport in some areas, some of the brand new signs.
Well, that and then the addition of,
The Beltway and.
well, yeah, you've had some changes, but you also have had some improvements with regard to some of your attractions and the things that you would want to direct to. I think it's probably time to evaluate that as well.
They're supposed to be doing something on window, because I reported to Hannah and she checked with them and they said they were gonna be doing signs along window.
And they're all below the window.
Yeah, you can't read.
If it's raining, we can't read them.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll follow up. We need to follow up with them on a couple other things that have just come up in the past couple of days. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back. And maybe when we report back out on the sign program, we can let you know about our conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything? Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Mayor Pro Tem?
You been gone.
Mrs. Faulkner?
Yes, yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
What are you asking me? Nancy?
Can we go home?
I'm home. Y'all can go home. Yeah, absolutely.
We are adjourned.
All right. Thank you.
I guess.